This video was brought to you by a comment by this individual. I'm sorry in advance, I'm gonna butcher this name. Methan? I'm never gonna attempt the last name. Either way, he's asking about how to use negative space in his design. What is negative space? How can I use it? So today we're looking at logo design and negative space. How can we use negative space in logos? Let's get into the video. Negative space in graphic design, it's a super fundamental principle to understand, and sometimes you'll hear it called white space or blank space, but we had to stop calling it blank space because Taylor Swift wrote a song about it. So today we call it negative space or white space. And the term white space actually originated from print design, and back in the old printing days, way back when, white space was any spot on the paper that didn't have ink. So if you work in typography or print design, you probably still hear it called white space a lot, but us logo designers, we call it negative space because we realize that it doesn't actually have to be white to be white space. It can be any color. So we use the term negative space. Now there's a bunch of really cool applications that we can use negative space for in our logo design. And I'm going to teach you kind of the basic fundamentals of negative space and how we can use it. But hey, just a quick reminder, like this video if you enjoy the content so I know to keep making it. And let's look at some logos with negative space. Now negative space really simply is just the process of using no shape to create a shape. I know that sounds really confusing and you're probably like, rewind? In other terms, it's just addition by subtraction. So what we do is we simply create a shape by taking shapes away. And we use the shapes of what we've taken away to convey to the viewer what the shape is they should be looking at. That was a lot of shapes in one sentence, I think. Now, if you Google negative space in logo design, you're gonna see a lot of designers doing things like this and this and this, where they're actually combining two different shapes into one by subtracting one shape out of another. And while that is a form of negative space in logo design, personally, I think the best logo designs that use negative space aren't trying to combine two different shapes, but rather they're making one shape, and that shape is visually recognizable by removing elements from the shape. For example, look at this logo for the US Open, which removes the lines of the tennis ball, but you can tell that this is still a tennis ball moving through the air, so it's only one shape. They're not trying to combine multiple shapes into one, they're simply removing pieces of the shape to make your brain realize what the shape is that it's looking at. When our brain sees a shape like this, we instantly associate it with things that we know. So we can actually trick the brain into seeing shapes that aren't really there by removing pieces of a shape, and then the brain kind of gets this overall picture and it fills out the rest of the design for us. My favorite example of negative space in logo design is the logo for my brand design agency, and that is Storytime Branding and the pencil icon that we're showing here. The pencil icon here uses negative space to communicate visually to you, the viewer, that it's a pencil. If you think about the tip of a pencil, it consists of three different shapes, right? The base, and then you have like where the wood is showing, where it's been ground away, and then the actual lead. What we did is we actually removed a piece of that pencil to create this logo mark, but your brain can still tell that it's a pencil because your brain is actually like tricked into seeing the pencil shape because it's a recognizable shape to you. The first thing to understand and note if you're going to be doing negative space logos is that you want to keep your logo design recognizable. If you're trying to use an abstract shape in your negative space, or maybe something that's industry specific that the general person wouldn't be able to easily recognize, using negative space is probably not going to be your best bet. And the reason is that negative space requires the brain to associate the shape with whatever you're trying to communicate. So if it's not something the brain can easily recognize, then using negative space in that design might just hurt you because the brain won't be able to figure out what it's looking at. But in this case, everybody knows what a pencil looks like, so it's very easy to associate this icon with what it's supposed to be. The second major tip I have for designing negative space logos is to use leading lines to communicate. What do I mean by this? Well, I mean you leave the brain with shapes that it can easily follow. If we go back to that US Open logo, you can see that the brain kind of follows that circle around. So even though there's a gap in the circle where there's not any design, our brain is still kind of visually creating that line for us. In the storytime icon, we create leading lines between the pencil lead and the base of the pencil. This actually tricks the brain into seeing lines that aren't actually there. So you quickly associate the pencil icon because your brain is seeing the line almost like closing off that section of white space. For example, if we were to remove those little lines at the bottom that are connecting the pencil lead to the base of the pencil, you would notice that this design doesn't look nearly as visually appealing. Same logo, same concept of negative space, but for whatever reason it doesn't look right. Well, that reason is because your eye is freely moving throughout this design and it doesn't quite see the association between the tip of the pencil and the base of the pencil, so it's kind of lost. When we lose those leading lines, the negative space doesn't work in our favor anymore. It starts to lose its integrity. So when you're creating logos using negative space elements, try to create a mark where the negative space feels contained. That way your brain can visualize the mark and it doesn't feel lost in the design. The negative space is contained in a way that makes the mark visible and understandable. I hope this video helped you understand a little bit more about how negative space works in logo design and how you can use it in the logos that you're making. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like and subscribe to this video. If you want to continue to learn about logo design and branding, go ahead and click one of these links on your screen, and I'm going to see you in the next video.